Ever felt like life was passing you by? Alicia did. At 60, she thought she knew everything about her quiet, predictable life with Richard. But one spontaneous night out changed everything. What happens when routine meets rebellion? Stick around to find out, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of unexpected twists. I've always been the type of woman who finds comfort in predictability, in the rhythm of routine. But that evening, as I stood before the mirror with my brush suspended midair, I understood I was on the verge of venturing into uncharted territory. My spouse, Richard, was off on a fishing excursion, leaving me by myself in our tranquil home. The quiet was almost tangible, a stark departure from the usual buzz of our everyday existence. Taking a deep breath, I chose to visit a club by myself. It was a spontaneous decision, a defiance against the dullness that had characterized my life for so long, and there, surrounded by the throbbing music and swirling lights, I encountered him. His name was Jake, and his look carried a spark that questioned everything I believed I understood. What transpired next would alter everything. I've always been the type of woman who finds comfort in predictability, in the rhythm of routine. My name is Alicia, and at 60, I've experienced a life of quiet satisfaction with my husband, Richard. For 40 years, we've shared a life as cozy as an old favorite sweater. Richard, with his passion for fishing, would often spend his weekends angling in the peaceful waters with his friends Mike and Tom. But this weekend, something felt different. Richard had arranged a 3-day fishing trip, leaving me alone in our large, now eerily silent home. The quiet was almost tangible, a stark departure from the usual buzz of our everyday existence. With Richard away, the house felt like a stage prepared for a performance that hadn't begun, or perhaps one that had just concluded. I stood before the mirror, my reflection a tapestry of years, lines marked with memories. I picked up makeup I hadn't used in ages, the colors bright against the subdued tones of my usual routine. As I applied the rouge, my hand hesitated, the brush hovering in the air. What was I doing? The woman looking back at me wasn't the Alicia of the past, the one satisfied with her books and her garden. No, this was someone new, someone bold, someone prepared to step into the unknown. Taking a deep breath, I decided to visit a club by myself. It was a spontaneous decision, a defiance against the dullness that had characterized my life for so long. The club was not what I anticipated. The music was a pulsating rhythm that seemed to resonate through my very core. The lights were a swirling mix of colors that danced across the walls. I felt out of place, yet strangely exhilarated. I ordered a drink, something potent, something that would burn away the edges of my hesitation. As I sipped, I observed the crowd, the young and the restless, moving with a freedom I had long forgotten. Then I saw him. He was leaning against the bar, his gaze meeting mine from across the room. There was an intensity in his eyes, a spark that seemed to challenge the very atmosphere around us. He approached, his movement smooth, like a predator stalking its prey. His name was Alex, he said, his voice smooth, almost mesmerizing. We talked, or rather, he talked. And I listened, drawn into his world of art and adventure, a stark contrast to the life I knew. The night unfolded with a dance, our bodies moving closer than was proper, the heat between us palpable. Alex's touch was electric, sending shivers down my spine. We moved to a quieter corner where the shadows seemed to wrap us in secrecy. His lips found mine, and for a moment, time stood still. The kiss was deep, passionate, a forbidden dance of tongues and breath that spoke of desires long suppressed. As the night deepened, so did our connection. We found ourselves in his apartment, the world outside forgotten. The intimacy was intense, a whirlwind of sensations that left no room for thought. The club was a blur of lights and sounds, a stark contrast to the silence of my living room. I ordered an Aperol Spritz, the first of 3, feeling the alcohol warm my veins, loosening the tight grip of my usual inhibitions. As I sipped my drink, I noticed 3 young men watching me from across the room. They were in their late 20s, with an air of confidence that only youth can afford. One of them, with a charming smile, approached me. "Hi, I'm Jake," he said, extending his hand. His friends, introduced as Leo and Sam, followed suit. They were polite, engaging, and before I knew it, we were dancing. The music, the drinks, their compliments, it was intoxicating. As the night progressed, my guard began to lower. The thrill of the dance, The heat of the room and the attention from these young men made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. Jake's hand found mine, pulling me closer. His touch sent a shiver through me that was both thrilling and a little terrifying. We moved to a quieter corner of the club where the music was just a distant pulse. Jake leaned in, his breath warm against my ear. "You're not like anyone here, Alicia. There's something magnetic about you." His words, coupled with the alcohol, made my heart race. Leo and Sam joined us, their laughter and stories weaving around me like a spell. They spoke of travels, of adventures, of life lived on the edge, and I found myself yearning for the same. Their world was so different from mine, so vibrant and full of possibility. As the night wore on, I found myself in a conversation with Jake that felt more intimate than any I'd had in years. His eyes held mine, and there was a moment, a heartbeat, where I thought he might kiss me, but instead he whispered, "Let's get out of here. There's a place nearby where we can talk, just the two of us." The suggestion was both exhilarating and dangerous. My mind screamed caution, but my heart, fueled by the night's escapades, said yes. We left the club. The cool night air was a shock after the heat of the dance floor. Jake led me to a small, secluded bar where the ambiance was low-lit and intimate. Here, away from the crowd, Jake's attention was solely on me. His questions were personal, probing, and I found myself sharing stories of my life with Richard, of the comfort and the quiet that had defined my existence. Jake listened, his gaze intense, making me feel seen in a way I hadn't anticipated. The conversation shifted, became more playful, more flirtatious. His hand brushed against mine, a touch that felt like a spark. "You're full of surprises, Alicia," he murmured, his voice low. The night was slipping away, and with it, my usual reservations. Jake's charm was undeniable, his youth a stark contrast to my morning after my return. The house was still. The silence that once felt comforting now seemed to mock me, echoing the emptiness I felt inside. I stood in the doorway, my suitcase still in hand, the weight of my actions pressing down on me like a physical force. The thrill of the past week had faded, leaving behind a trail of guilt and confusion. I dropped my bag by the door and walked into the living room, my steps hesitant as if the floor might give way under the weight of my secrets. The familiar surroundings, once a source of comfort, now felt like a stage where I was the lead in a play I didn't want to perform. The pictures on the walls, our wedding photo, the family portraits, they all stared back at me, their eyes questioning, accusing. I sank into the couch, the fabric cool against my skin, and closed my eyes. The memories of the hotel room, the laughter, the whispered promises, they all came rushing back. Jake, with his youthful exuberance, had been the catalyst, but it was Leo and Sam who had deepened the experience, turning a fleeting escape into something more profound. Each touch, each kiss had been a rebellion against the life I had known, a life that now seemed to be waiting for me, unchanged, unyielding. The sound of the front door opening jolted me from my reverie. Richard was home earlier than expected. My heart raced, not with the excitement of the past week, but with a dread that tightened my chest. I heard his footsteps, the familiar shuffle of his shoes on the hardwood floor, and then he was there, standing in the doorway, his fishing gear still slung over his shoulder. "Alicia," he said, his voice a mix of surprise and concern, "you're back early." I nodded, unable to meet his gaze. Yes, I needed to come home. He set his gear down and approached, his hand reaching out to touch my shoulder. "Is everything all right? You look different." The touch was gentle, yet it felt like a brand marking me with the reality of my betrayal. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just tired." Richard sat beside me, his presence overwhelming in its normality. "Did you have fun while I was away? Did you do anything special?" The question was innocent, but it cut deep. I swallowed, the words sticking in my throat. "I went out to a club," I managed, the truth slipping out like a confession. "A club?" His eyebrows raised in surprise. "That's not like you." I forced a smile, the act feeling more like a grimace. "I guess I needed a change of scenery." He nodded, accepting my explanation with a simplicity that made my heart ache. "Well, I'm glad you're back. I missed you." The words, so genuine, so Richard, made the tears well up. I turned away, pretending to adjust a cushion. "I missed you too." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Richard talked about his fishing trip, the big catch, the camaraderie with Mike and Tom. I listened, my responses automatic, my mind elsewhere. Every laugh, every touch from him felt like a reminder of what I had risked, what I had potentially lost. As night fell, we sat together in the quiet of our bedroom. Richard, unaware of the storm within me, reached for my hand. Alicia, is there something you want to tell me? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. My heart pounded, the truth on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't bring myself to speak it. Instead, I squeezed his hand, a silent plea for forgiveness, for understanding. I just needed to feel alive, Richard. I'm sorry if I worried you. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, perhaps sensing the depth of my turmoil, but not its cause. You're here now, that's what matters, he said, pulling me into an embrace. In his arms, I felt the safety of our past, the comfort of our shared history, but also the sharp edge of my guilt. The week with Jake, Leo, and Sam had been a whirlwind, a vivid contrast to the quiet life I had always known. Now, back in the arms of my husband, the reality of my choices weighed heavily on me. I watched Richard, his face serene, his eyes closed in the dim light of our bedroom. The silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and unasked questions. My heart was a tumultuous sea, waves of guilt crashing against the shores of my conscience. I wanted to tell him, to unburden myself of the secret that felt like a stone around my neck. But as I looked at him, so trusting, so unaware, the words wouldn't come. Instead, I whispered, Richard, do you ever feel like life is passing you by? Like there's more out there? He opened his eyes, turning to look at me with a gentle curiosity. Sometimes, he admitted, his voice soft. But then I remember what we have, and it feels like enough. His words, so simple yet profound, made my heart ache. Here was a man who had given me a life of stability, of love, and I had risked it all for a fleeting thrill. The guilt was suffocating, yet the fear of losing him, of shattering our life together, was even greater. I lay there, my mind racing. Will Alicia confront Richard, or will she keep her secret? The question haunted me, echoing in the silence of our room. I thought about the week, about the freedom I felt, the rush of being someone else, someone unburdened by the years. But now, in the quiet with Richard's steady breathing beside me, I realized the depth of what I could lose. My marriage, our home, the comfort of our routine, all could be jeopardized by my confession. Yet the weight of my secret was unbearable. I turned to face him, my voice barely a whisper. Richard, there's something I need to tell you. He shifted, his eyes meeting mine, concern etching his features. What is it, Alicia? I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. I went to a club and I met someone. Not just someone, but 3 someones. And things, they happened. Richard's face went through a series of emotions. Surprise, confusion, and then a slow dawning of understanding. What do you mean, things happened? I swallowed hard, the confession like a bitter pill. I was with them, Richard. I was unfaithful. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard's expression was unreadable, his eyes searching mine for something, perhaps for the truth he didn't want to believe. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. Why, Alicia? Why would you do that? Tears streamed down my face, the dam of my emotions breaking. I don't know, Richard. I felt trapped, like I was missing out on life. I needed to feel something, anything other than the routine. He sat up, his back to me, his shoulders tense. And did it make you feel alive? Yes, I admitted, my voice trembling. But it also made me realize how much I stand to lose, how much I've already lost. Richard turned back to me, his eyes filled with the pain I had caused. Alicia, I need time to think about this. I need to understand. I nodded, the reality of my actions settling in like a cold fog. I understand. I'm so sorry, Richard. He stood up, his movement slow, deliberate. I'm going to sleep in the guest room tonight. We'll talk more in the morning. As he left the room, the door closing softly behind him, I was left alone with my thoughts. The silence now a stark reminder of the chasm I had created between us. The question remained unanswered, hanging in the air like a specter. Will Alicia confront Richard, or will she keep her secret? But now the answer was clear. I had confronted him, and the consequences were just beginning to unfold. The moment stretched on, and I found myself sitting next to Richard, the remote in his hand, his eyes on the screen. I opened my mouth to speak, but instead I asked, "How was the fishing trip?" Richard, without looking away from the game, replied, "Oh, it was great. Caught a big one." His indifference was a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. That's when it hit me. Here I was, having lived through a week that changed me fundamentally, and he hadn't even noticed my absence. The realization was both liberating and terrifying. I knew then what I had to do. The weight of my secret, the guilt, the fear, it all needed to be addressed. I couldn't let this silence, this indifference continue to define our relationship. I needed to confront the reality of my actions, not just for my sake, but for ours. "Richard," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me, "I need to talk to you about something important." He turned off the TV, the room suddenly quiet, and looked at me, his expression shifting from casual to concerned. "What is it, Alicia?" I took a deep breath, the words feeling like stones in my mouth. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our life together, and while you were away, I did something I'm not proud of." Richard's face tightened, his eyes searching mine for clues. "What did you do, Alicia?" "I went out," I began, my voice trembling now, "to a club, and I met some people, young men, and I got carried away. I was unfaithful, Richard." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with the weight of my confession. Richard's face was a mask of shock, his usual calm demeanor shattered. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice a whisper as if afraid to hear the answer. "I felt like I was suffocating," I admitted, tears now freely flowing. "I wanted to feel alive, to feel something different, but it was a mistake, Richard. A terrible mistake." He stood up, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair. "I trusted you, Alicia. I thought we were happy." "We were," I said, my voice breaking. "We are, but I lost sight of that. I was selfish, and I'm so sorry." Richard stopped pacing, his back to me, his shoulders slumped. "I need time, Alicia. I need to think about this, about us." "I understand," I whispered, feeling the chasm between us widen with every second of his silence. He turned to face me, his eyes red, his expression one of profound sadness. "I'm going to stay with Mike for a few days. I need space to process this." I nodded, the pain of his decision like a physical blow. "I'll be here when you're ready to talk. I love you, Richard. I hope you can forgive me." He didn't respond, just grabbed his jacket and left, the door closing with a finality that echoed through the empty house. Alone, I sat back on the couch, the silence now a deafening roar. The pictures on the walls, our life together, seemed to watch me with judgment. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with the consequences. The days that followed were a blur of introspection and regret. I replayed the events of that night over and over, each time seeing more clearly the folly of my actions. I missed Richard, missed the comfort of our routine, the predictability that I had once found stifling, but now longed for. One evening, as I sat in our kitchen, the phone rang. It was Richard. His voice was cautious, distant. "Alicia, I've been thinking. I want to talk. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Yes, of course," I replied, my heart lifting slightly at the prospect of reconciliation, or at least understanding. The next day, we met at a small cafe, neutral ground. Richard looked tired, his usual joviality replaced by a somber seriousness. "I've been thinking a lot," he started, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug as he looked at me. "About us, about what happened. I've been staying with Mike, trying to sort through my feelings." I nodded, my hands nervously twisting the napkin in front of me. "I've been doing the same, Richard. I've realized so much about myself, about us." He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine with a mixture of pain and resolve. "Alicia, I love you. I've loved you for 40 years, and that doesn't just go away. But what you did, it's shaken me to my core." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I held his gaze. "I know, Richard. I've hurt you deeply, and I'm so sorry. I was looking for something, but I realized now that what I needed was right here with you. Richard's expression softened slightly. I've been thinking about what you said about feeling trapped, about wanting to feel alive. Maybe I've been too complacent, too caught up in my own world of fishing and routine. It's not just you, I interjected. I've been complacent too. I let myself drift away from what truly matters, from you. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I want to understand, Alicia. I want to forgive you. But I need to know if you're truly ready to work on us, on our marriage. I am, I said earnestly, squeezing his hand. I've never been more certain. I want to rebuild what I've damaged, to rediscover what we've lost. Richard nodded, his eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. I've missed you, Alicia. Not just your presence, but your laughter, your touch, the way you make our home feel like home. I've missed you too, I whispered, the weight of my confession and his forgiveness beginning to lift. I want to start over, Richard, to make new memories, to live more fully together. He looked down at our hands, then back up at me. I think we can do that, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take both of us being honest and open with each other. I agree, I said, feeling a spark of hope ignite within me. I'm ready to be honest, Richard. I want to share everything with you, to be as open as we've never been before. We sat there for a while longer, discussing not just the past, but the future. We talked about small changes, about trips we could take, about hobbies we could share, about how we could bring back the excitement into our lives together. As we left the cafe, Richard took my hand, a gesture so simple yet so profound after the turmoil we'd been through. Let's go home, Alicia, he said, his voice filled with a tentative hope. Walking back to our car, I realized that the truth had indeed dawned on me. I had only truly started living at the moment I decided to confront my mistakes and fight for what was real, for what was worth saving. Our marriage, our life together was not just a comfortable routine, but a vibrant tapestry of shared experiences, love, and now a renewed commitment to each other. In the quiet of our home, as we settled back into our lives, I knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where we would both strive to live more fully, not apart, but together. And as Richard turned on the TV to watch his fishing shows, I sat beside him, not lost in my own thoughts, but present, truly present in our shared life.